So with our nutrients, we have to mix that drips onto our plants. Since it's soilless, it needs everything. So our water supply comes in as pure water. We test our water, find out what's in our water, goes through a filter system, goes through a pressure regulator. Then it comes into 3 different fertilizer injectors. Comes down here, goes through another filter. The fertilizer injectors are pulling up from 3 different tanks. The first one, we measure this every day. We need to know the pH of the water. So this has the balancing factor of if the pH of the water comes in at 8.8, we need it to be at 5.9. So we got to change the acidity in our water. So this tank is what it is. So to drop at 5.9, we add sulfuric acid, which is actually the same thing used in car batteries. It's a battery acid. That brings the pH down.
So that, wait a minute, I'm drinking battery acid?
The plants are drinking it, but it's diluted with water, so that's not pure battery acid. There's a little battery acid mixed in.
And so that's going to bring the pH down.
It's going to bring the pH down of that 8 water down to 5.9.
Okay.
So that's quite a bit. So you need a good dose of acid to bring it down. And the reason we do that is because nutrients are unlocked that the tomato needs. Calcium, magnesium, all the trace elements at 5.9 is the ideal.
For tomatoes.
For tomatoes. You go too low, you go to 4, you'll kill your plants because now you're putting toxic chemicals that are released at that pH level. But if you let it go too alkaline, 8, you're going to lock up some nutrients that the water is not going to be able to feed the plants.
So you could put chemicals into the water for the plants, but the plants can't absorb it because the pH isn't correct.
Correct.
So that's why we always have to check our pH.
And every kind of plant, whether it's a blueberry that likes it in the 4s, or let's say broccoli and cabbage that likes it in the 7s, it depends on each plant what nutrient it needs. It's unlocked at different levels of the pH scale.
See, at school we're trying to keep it around 5.5, only because we've got a lot of different plants going on.
Okay, that's a little sour, I would say.
Okay.
So
I want to go.
I think 5.9 is a little sour, for what we call acid for the plants, but that's when you're doing a perfect system. Evidently 5.9 is it for tomatoes. If you're growing in the garden, you probably want it more like 6 to 6.5.
Okay.
Because there's different variables in the garden with your soil. Mm-hmm. So then our next tank has our major nutrient. So your nitrogen.
Can we see in that one?
Sure.
Whoa, it's blue.
Yep, it's blue.
So that's your nitrogen.
Nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus.
Okay.
So those are your 3 major nutrients.
NPK.
NP and K. Whenever you see 3 numbers on a fertilizer, that's what it is. And how do you remember that? N is for nitrogen, P is for phosphorus, but K, this is the one that always got me in college, because I went to college for this. K, I always said carrots. Carrots love potassium. So that's how I remember it, even though carrot starts with C. But that's how I remember it.
NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus.
No, phosphorus, potassium. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The middle number is phosphorus.
Okay.
Nitrogen is good for plant growth, leaf growth. Phosphorus is good for root growth. And potassium is good for setting buds. And no matter what plant you're dealing with, that's pretty much basically how it goes.
So when you get the plant to grow, you want more nitrogen.
Right, but then you want to calm it down, and you want to feed the plant enough nitrogen to keep going. But if you feed it too much, you're going to get more green and less blossom.
Okay.
So there is a balance. There's a perfect amount for that too. Again, we test it.
And you know what happens when you give it too much nitrogen, like I did at school?
You can burn the root tips right off.
Well, all the plants got kind of yellow.
Yeah, it could do the opposite.
Yes,
Yeah,
so things
yeah.
got very yellow when I burned the plants.
Right, and sometimes you'll see tip burning on, like on lettuce and stuff. You could see the tip of a plant burn, but you can see this leaf is nice and evenly green throughout. That's what we like. We don't like to see any veins turning yellow or anything like that. Then we know we have a nutrient problem.
Okay.
And then the final tank, we have the minor nutrients. So that's actually a recipe. We send out our water to a university, Clemson University down the Carolinas. They send that to a place that makes, we call it a cocktail, but it's a mix of different minor nutrients that works with my water, because my water has minor nutrients, major nutrients, and they don't want to put too much or too little in, so they need to know what's in your water already, and then we make the recipe to add to exactly what a tomato needs.
So if I were using city water like at my school, then it's going to have a lot different nutrients than you have here in your well water.
Right, yeah, a whole lot. I mean, everybody's water, my neighbor is going to have a different nutrient level than what I have.
Yeah.
So, and this, I have 2 wells on my farm. They're going to have two different nutrient levels.
All right, let's go see your daughter because she's doing some pruning.
Yeah.